Hello and welcome to Site Staff Pro. My name is Reid and this is a preview of our new content on workplace violence and harassment. A workplace hazard you may not have considered is workplace violence and harassment. What is workplace violence and harassment? Most people think of violence as a physical assault. However, workplace violence and harassment are a much broader problem. It can be defined as any act in which a person is abused, threatened, intimidated, or assaulted in his or her employment. Workplace violence is defined as an exercise of physical force or the attempt to exercise physical force by a person against a worker in a workplace that causes or could cause physical injury to the worker. Some examples of workplace violence may include verbally threatening to attack a worker, leaving threatening notes or sending threatening emails, shaking a fist in a worker's face, wielding a weapon at work, pushing, hitting, or trying to hit a worker, throwing an object at a worker, or kicking an object the worker is standing on, such as a ladder. A number of activities or circumstances may increase the risk of workplace violence, including a mobile workplace, such as a leasing agent visiting various buildings, public or community contact, working with unstable or volatile people, working alone or with just a few people, or working late nights or very early mornings. While fortunately not a common occurrence, many rental housing providers have reported finding unauthorised occupants sleeping or seeking shelter in the stairwells or common areas of the building or around the property. Take a moment and consider how you would react in that scenario. Would you feel safe approaching an individual asleep in a stairwell? Here are the steps to follow. Do not physically engage. Before speaking to the individual, where possible, find a co-worker to assist. Keep a safe distance and ask the individual to leave the property. Advise the individual that you don't want to call the police, but if they don't leave, you will have to. The individual cannot stay in the building or on the property. If the individual is reluctant to leave, then do call 911 and ask emergency services for assistance. And remember, for your own safety, do not physically approach any unauthorised individual. If at any time an individual's behaviour is threatening or volatile, do not verbally or physically approach, simply call 911 for assistance. If an incident of workplace violence occurs, first notify the police or emergency responders for immediate assistance, but always ensure it is reported to your supervisor. All workers should be aware of the employer's workplace violence policy and programme. Individuals have the right to refuse work in an unsafe environment. Employees have an obligation to alert their employer if they are under the threat of domestic violence. Domestic violence is a pattern of behaviour used by one person to gain power and control over another person with whom the person has or has had a personal relationship. Domestic violence becomes a workplace hazard when it occurs at or spills over into the workplace, putting the targeted worker at risk and posing a threat to co-workers. This is why domestic violence is included in the legislated workplace health and safety definition of violence. Workers witnessing a domestic violence incident must report it to their employer and, if appropriate, to the police. When an employer is aware that a worker is or is likely to be exposed to domestic violence at the work site, the employer must take reasonable precautions to protect the worker and any other persons at that work site likely to be affected. Workplace bullying is repeated, unreasonable, or inappropriate behaviour directed towards a worker or group of workers that creates a risk to health and safety. Examples of workplace bullying can include social isolation, giving someone the silent treatment, rumours, personal attacks of a person's private life or personal attributes, verbal aggression, making jokes verbally or through email that are obviously offensive, withholding information, withholding job responsibility, excessive or unjustified criticism, over-monitoring of work, trivial fault finding, replacing proper work with demeaning jobs, setting unrealistic goals or deadlines. Bullying should not be confused with tough management styles. Bullying is negative and persistent abuse. Workplace bullying or harassment is defined as engaging in a course of vexatious comment or conduct against a worker in a workplace that is known or ought to reasonably be known to be unwelcome. Examples of workplace harassment may include making remarks, jokes, or innuendos that demean, ridicule, intimidate, or offend, displaying or circulating offensive pictures or materials in print or electronic form, bullying, repeated offensive or intimidating phone calls or emails, or workplace sexual harassment. As a worker, it's important to know that there are many managerial tasks that would not be considered workplace harassment. These may include such items as change in work assignments, scheduling, job assessments and evaluations, workplace inspections, implementing of health and safety procedures, or disciplinary actions. Differences of opinion or minor disagreements between co-workers would also not generally be considered workplace harassment. Workplace sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome words or actions associated with sex, sexual orientation, or gender that are known or should be known to be offensive, embarrassing, humiliating, or demeaning to a worker or a group of workers in the workplace. It can also include behavior that intimidates or isolates individuals. Some examples of sexual harassment include asking questions, talking or writing about sexual activities, vulgar humor or language related to sexuality, displaying or circulating sexual images, pornography, or offensive sexual jokes in print, leering or inappropriate staring at and invading personal spaces, unnecessary physical contact, making gender-related comments about someone's physical characteristics, or verbally abusing, threatening, or taunting someone based on gender or sexual orientation. Also, threatening to penalise or otherwise punish a worker if they refuse a sexual advance would be considered workplace sexual harassment. Try some of these prevention measures before workplace violence and harassment become an issue. Deal with conflicts swiftly. From the moment they begin, harassment and violence stem from unresolved conflicts that fester. Open effective lines of communication because aggressors thrive on the silence of victims and witnesses. Model behaviour by being fair and respectful with everyone. Be tolerant and open-minded about people's differences. If you think you are being harassed or bullied, share your experience. Talk to someone you trust, someone who will support you and provide a fresh perspective and sympathetic ear. Make a record. Keep a diary and details of events, including names of witnesses and any emails or relevant correspondence. Seek advice and support. Contact someone who can help you. It may be your direct supervisor, another manager, a member of the human resource team, or counselling service. If you witness harassment or bullying, stop the bullying or harassment, name the behaviour to the harasser or bully, and refer to the company's policy and legislation. If you're not comfortable stepping in, you must report it to your supervisor or human resources. Support the target of the bullying or harassment. Empower bystanders and co-workers with appreciation if they were supportive, or with information on how to act in the future. Take steps to ensure the target is protected in the future, and report the incident to your supervisor, another manager, or human resources. Workers should use the process set out in their workplace harassment programme to deal with their concerns about harassment where possible. You must report if you or someone you work with is being harassed. What if the alleged harasser is the employer or the supervisor? It's important that workers be able to report workplace harassment to a person who will treat the information confidentially and will follow up on the reported incidents or complaints in a timely manner. Your workplace violence and harassment programme will outline the procedures to follow in this case. The goal is to have a complaint addressed objectively and investigated in an appropriate manner. It's important an employer, as part of his or her investigation into complaints or incidents of workplace harassment, maintain confidentiality to the extent possible. Any person who investigates a workplace incident would not be involved in the incident and should not be under the direct control of the alleged harasser. An appropriate investigation would generally be timely, fair, and address all relevant issues. An employer would need to treat an incident or complaint seriously, to act upon it promptly, and to allow time and sufficient resources to investigate and deal with it. Employers must ensure the worker who was allegedly harassed is informed in writing about the results of the workplace harassment investigation and of any corrective action that has been or will be taken as a result of the investigation. Corrective actions are taken to try to prevent a reoccurrence of any workplace incidents. Where the harassment arises from resident, contractor, or the public towards a worker, the employer may deal with the incident by modifying the services provided to the resident, or refusing service to the public, or termination of a contractor where appropriate. Where the investigation finds that harassment arises from a worker's supervisor or other person associated with the workplace, there could be individual corrective action taken, such as apologies, education, counselling, shift changes, reprimands, suspensions, or termination, depending on the nature and severity of the behaviour. A respectful work environment is an environment where there is sensitivity and awareness to different religions and ethnic holidays and customs for employees. Employees with disabilities are willingly provided accommodation. Members of all demographics feel they belong. People whose views differ from that of the majority are listened to. People are recognised and acknowledged as individuals. And there is a high value placed on the ability to agree or disagree with respect.